Stars in Álvaro Íñigo and Roberto Macías Pineda, Castillo Miranda, and Anduaga. Mancera Hermanos, Arthur Young. In auditing and consulting, and at Edward Perez Gavilanes C. as consulting business management in director aplicada, empresa en educación y mercadotecnia, with Pedro Domecq, Banco Nacional de México, Ministry of Interior, Department of the Federal District, and other of importance. In 1986, he founded a company, Communications for Top Management, consulting firm in marketing, communication, managerial development, having among its customers to Grupo y Servicio Panamericano de Protección, SACB, developing marketing programs, service engineering, quality service, and strategic actions. In addition, communication experience that were recorded in engineering and services to create satisfactory customers, edited by Micro Hill, that reached sales of more than 740 exemplaries. Pemex, innovation applied to industrial security, Vancomer, National Commission of Water, College of Public Accountants, Desert Group, and several small and medium-sized companies. He has been professor at bachelor degree and PhD degree at the High School of Commerce at Politécnico Nacional and also in UNAM, National Center of Industrial Teaching, College and Institute of Public Accountants, and other institutions. He taught managerial studies in Central and South America by the Development Agency by country. He has given training courses in most of the schools in the Mexican Republic that are affiliated to the College of Public Accountants in some academias and business environments, participating in international congresses, public sector and private, in Mexico and abroad. They have many written works. They have written more than 20 books, public accountant, administrative accounting, developing managerial strategy, creative management, manual of excellence, the Bible, effective treaty, strategic planning, service engineering for satisfying customers, the new dimensions of public accounting, among others. With no further ado, I'm going to introduce this personality, Dr. Fabian Villegas. The floor is yours. Good afternoon. We start with the big challenge of the public accountant in its reinvention process. And I would like to give some history considering last century. At the beginning of the last century, the second industrial revolution started. From the point of view of the public accountant, we can say that in Mexico, it was institutionalized as a profession in 1907 with public accountant Fernando Diez Barroso. From then on, the profession of public accountant was an acknowledged career. Years before, in the last century, a lot of accounting training courses were developed as private accountants. And these type of studies continued. Some academies that offered accounting training courses, but accounting as a profession was enriched little by little. Let's remember that in the 20s, GM contributed with cost accounting during the 30s, internal control auditing in the 40s, much more. And at the beginning of the third industrial revolution, as you know, the technological symbol of this revolution was the computer. In 1959, simultaneously, in Mexico, the public accountant was given the expert opinion for fiscal terms. And this was a change in public accountancy that had a long trajectory, and this gave a big impulse. Fiscal, consulting, and auditing also entered. In the 80s, you might remember that the PC computers were famous. They were more than a processor like the mainframe. They had accounting programs because that helped a lot with the accounting auxiliaries, and that was a great tool for public accountants. So this combines technologically with internet, and for them a lot of advances in IT were present, digital technology. But look at this, all these progress of public accountancy were increasing step by step. That means that those were linear advances and so on. And we came to the 21st century. When we were just about to finish 21st century, in 2022, the College and Mexican Institute of Public Accountants, now knowing that there was a lot of progress, that was in 1999, sorry, they issued this book, Top Management Towards the 21st Century. It is still sold at the Institute to strengthen the bonds with top management and the steps forward. Back then, they had the idea that the public accountant had to update and interact. In this book, one of the big contributions was Laura Weinpack, that was a chairwoman of Arthur Andersen, Lawrence A. Weinpack. I'm sorry. And he said if the purpose of accounting is to be at the service of current decisions in a high technology market, the profession should be redefined. They thought that they needed to redefine, reconsider everything as a consequence of technology progress on IT and digital advances. It needed to be redefined. That was 1992. Nowadays, 30 years after this, 2022. Now we are going to update this conception. Now we are in the fourth industrial revolution with this century, and public accountants in this era, well, right now they were removed the tax expert opinion because right now the ministry can monitor all the taxpayer. Electronic invoicing was also one of the results, and financial statements had some limitations regarding information to make strategic decisions. Remember, historically, if you read from the 60s or 70s, the public accountant was considered the man of the information because those were relatively stable times. And that was enough to lead companies thinking that they were led from inside outside due to this stable environment. So that was the case. But then when we started with complex time that are in the fourth industrial revolution, this is not sufficient. 80% of the information that the top management needs are external factors for strategic decisions. Those are the conditions the accountant is there at the beginning of the century. So we needed to think about the future. What would be the future of the public accountant? And look at this experience. I have been given some training courses at different places, schools, etc. And I always say, let me know how you see the accounting career for 2030. And always I get this answer in a linear manner. They project the public accountancy concept projected to the future in a linear manner. This is acceptable in linear times just as the past century, but now with exponential changes, this is not enough. As a consequence of new technologies, these are characteristics of this industrial revolution: machine learning, the IoT, robotics, networks, sensors, blockchain, etc. So now we have big movements of exponential level. Transformations and changes are not continuous, they are faster and with an exponential growth. The curve is completely different because they transform digital transformation, taking to disruption and higher speeds. The world has changed and the curve is different. With these conditions of exponential progress, the linear concept doesn't work anymore. And this is specific from our point of view. So then, we have a question. We cannot make a linear projection. How then we can determine that? We need to be accurate on the differences of exponential progress. And why? Because this also implies different ways of thinking. Look at this. And a classic example at the Singularity University, where they follow up new technologies and providing new solutions. This is a very simple example to see the differences between a linear advance and an exponential advance. They say if we made 30 steps, then it would be simply this. We would have this progress of 30 steps forward. That's what we're used to see. But if we have exponential growth and each step will double previous meters, for example, 1 meter, then 2, then 8, 16, 32, etc. That could be an exponential progress. But look, after 30 steps, we would be walking 1 billion meters, more than 3 times the circumference around the moon. That was an exponential advance. This is the opposing. This is interesting because this has effects in our way of thinking. This is a linear thought, and this is an exponential thought. And this is for the public accountant. Those of you that are on the third industrial revolution should have an exponential thought. And that's logical. Many of the faults of the companies when transferring from one century to another and this exponential growth have caused big crises like Kodak, Blockbuster. Well, a lot can be said, but This was due to the way of thinking of executives that had a linear thought when the world was already exponential. A concrete case, to be objective, around the 80s, the cell phone became popular and they were expensive. They were around 3,000 US dollars. So the giant ATT asked one of the biggest firms all over the world to make a projection on how many cell phones could be selling at the end of the century. The company made the corresponding studies, presented a report, and they said that close to 500,000 cell phones for the year 2000. And what happened when we came to the year 2000? For 2000, 100 million inhabitants only in the United States had a telephone. Look at the difference between 1 million that company forecasted with the reality 100 millions. What happened that the company had a linear thinking when the world was exponential? That was the big difference. And just as this failed, Kodak, Blockbuster failed because they were having a linear thought in an exponential world. We do not understand this, but in our exponential growth, if we see the first six steps, 1, 4, 8, 32, 64, we might think it is linear. The first 5 or 6 steps, we have a very modest growth. But then we have the knee of the exponential curve, the shoulder. And from there on, we have big leaps, same steps. And then you come to 2048. Here it was from 1 to 32. So our mind kept these 6 steps and made a linear projection. Dr. Albert Allen exposed this clearly. The biggest fault of the humankind is not being capable to understand exponential function. In our DNA, we have linear growth because we have had a mean of linear growth. We're facing a century with exponential growth, and we are still thinking in linear terms. We need to change this way of thinking. So now, if we extend this curve, according to calculations, we're getting into this curve, to the shoulder of exponential growth. That's why you see this. Most of the projections show this. At the beginning of the century, we had artificial intelligence as of 1956, modest, advanced, but then we had some applications that were growing, and most of the new technologies got with some inertia. But compared with today's progress, there's simply a difference in 2004, 2007, when the first smartphone appeared. Big difference. In 2004, they started making progress on non-manned vehicles, but now it's a reality. They have drones to make non-manned automobiles for urban transportation. This kind of progress, this is happening only in 15 years. So right now we're just getting into the curve. By the end of this decade, we would be entering that curve or the shoulder where we will see more frequent changes than those in the first 20 years. So if we are going to project a public accountant in the next 8 years, we cannot make linear projections. we would be cheating. We need to make exponential projections. But look at this. The projections that are linear take as the basis the public accountant. But if the concept is linear, we will have linear results. Public accountants are according to the needs of the companies. This is very different. Then it means that we need to see which is the profile of the organizations where the public accountant will intervene to respond to the needs that are going to be different in the next 5, 10 years when they come to this curve and beyond. And we're seeing that. Then we need to apply a very simple technique. Go to the future, formulate probable and possible scenarios based on the events that we are experiencing day after day. A series of events, exponential technological advance. This is a reality that we are seeing. What's the effect for companies to the future? We have seen that in social network we see literature and companies getting into digital transformation to pass from analog companies to digital companies, as Gina Rometti mentioned when she was the chairwoman of IBM. At the end of the 60s, she said that. And when they use any technique which is exponential applied to the products IoT, third dimension printing, they come to technological advance and exponential growth, and they need to take care of it. So sooner or later, all companies are going to be technological, and therefore progress has to be exponential. So this is a reality that we are considering right now. Look at this. If we come, for example, from here to 10 years, technologies that we're experiencing would have advanced 30 times the potential. A computer that we buy this year in 10 years is going to be 30 times more powerful. And if we buy it for the 40s, then it's going to be 40 times more powerful. I am showing this scenario because the public accountant has to reinvent. So we're going to create these scenarios with disruptive changes, not to see only great advances, but when the company is going to be competitive, if any product or value added chain, we need to think about disruptive changes, facing them with the same change. Of course, competition is going to increase. We see increasingly numbers of identical products in a sector, companies participating in a single business. People have changed consumption habits, and this has to be gained not based on prices but to make it in a value. Companies are forced to sit and satisfy the customer, because when they satisfy the customer, they are gaining competitive advantages. Environmental protection, that's a complete compensation. And just as now I was making an examination of the balance, they say they make audits to certify something. I think that social responsibility needs to be certified and subject to an audit. Also, data immersion. When we talk about data immersion, it goes beyond to traditional information. In this scheme, in the past, we can see that enterprises use financial statements, administrative information, and that was more than enough. This is practically structured data of the company. But now 80% are non structured data. Now, talking about mass media, internet, they are producing all this bulk data. The same companies produce more data when they implement new IT systems. So now, competitive advantages mean extract value of data. Think about Amazon. They have 300 million customers. Look all the information that they obtain from customers. They can anticipate purchase intentions, preferences. That's why they are so successful and they have great service. Thanks to their databases, the application of data analytics to survey all this data and extract information. This is going to be common in all companies because all companies will have an abundance of data. Just as oil, that was the wealth of last century, now it would be with data. The one who extracts data would have competitive advantages. Innovation is a factor to create value. From the point of view that we are seeing that the change is just around the corner and being exponential with disruptive changes, this is the product of innovation. When I'm talking about innovation, I'm not talking about technological innovation. This is going to be really important. But this means sit together with the customer to provide more value to products and services and chain of value. That's the conquest. Innovation by business strategies like Jeff Bezos and some others. That's regardless of technological advance. But this could be good, but if it is not accepted, it is not worthwhile. Technological innovation is in the customer to provide more value and improve a way of living. And this is going to be a fundamental factor to compete. It means that innovation is going to be so democratic that each person in a company are going to be also innovators by developing their soft capabilities. And we can say then that those big events that we're experiencing, they can be more, but those are the most representative. They are advancing and they are a big trend and they will lead to transformation. With this, we're creating a probable scenario to determine the following, which is the company profile that experiences these changes. All companies are technological. All of them are technology companies. When they go from analog information to digital transformation, they are technological. And with exponential progress, they need to monitor their technological advance. And the artificial intelligence, all these would be intervening in the companies. Remember that robotics is impacting all repetitive activities that are predictable and even cognitive.
Especially if we see that a robot that costs $23,000 more or less and can substitute more than five people, it means in a year the robot is already paid. In 10 years, the robot will be 30 times more powerful and at less cost. So this will be very common in the future. And the people would be thinking beings creating value. Because in the past, people were deprived from thinking. What will be the most important product to be produced in a company? Data, information that is useful for making informed decisions, elements that can be taken into consideration for decisions, for important activities. Innovation must be followed up and the income of the company must be sustained in the most innovative products and not be lagged behind. Monitoring will be needed to see how innovative they are. Thinking people has to be very, very updated and apply their knowledge in the benefit of the country, of the company. The companies have to be centered in customers, and all the digital transformation, this transformation that we're talking about is not necessarily technological. It uses technology, but in order to be counter centric, they need the talents of people. So it goes much more beyond technology, and they have to be centered on the customer, because the customer is the beginning and the end in any um, term activity regarding or that has to do with the business. In the past, companies got something added value and sold the new product. Now, all companies have to create value. Companies have to be highly creative. And if they are innovative, they are creative, and they change the value generating scheme. This kind of companies will be dominating in the future. If we can measure the impact that will answer to these needs, we can now think what a public accountant has to do in the future, and that is being more strategic than anything. Many of you might recall, or maybe not, because you are very young. In the past, financial statements were presented after 15 days to make informed decisions, but now they have to do all this collection of information immediately and give the information so that companies can make the decisions that are needed to increase their value, their gains. So we have to be very, very honest, and we should ask ourselves how a public accountant has to reinvent themselves to answer to the requirements of the future companies. Companies that would be, in one way or another, the majority of companies with the characteristics of innovating. Another question would be, what knowledge, capacities, and abilities must a public accountant has to have in order to meet the needs of the future? And these answers are very important because they will tell us how we can reinvent the public accountant. This is very important because this will be the base to redefine public accountancy. In the past, there were only linear schemes living on the same concept, present concept of accountancy. Now we have to redefine ourselves, and we have to do it taking advantage of the professional characteristics of the accountant, because the accountants are inside great companies. They know the company from inside, from the inside. So they really know, and they know what the company needs. And in order to satisfy all the requirements and needs of the company, there are some other the professions, for example, the technological ones. But let's always remember that the only thing that technology is not the only thing that is required. We need other kind of knowledges in order to solve problems, some soft capacities that are needed. So let's go back and you think by yourself, what are the knowledges, capacities, abilities that a public accountant must have in this redefinition process in order to face the future or current demands of the companies? So, through surveys, workshops, researches, investigations, the knowledges that they need is dominating new concepts on management and business. Companies that were created the last century were created under the concept and theories of the old management school. What we learn in the school regarding the administrative process and many Peter Duke's concepts, of course, there are some of them that are good, but there's a lot of change. Those were concepts in the past so that companies were stable in the long term, very operative. That's why in literature of those years until the decade of the 60s and the 70s, efficiency and productivity was very important. But now the strategy is the most important thing. Traditional companies worked under those schemes, very box squared, very orthodox, and with routine, very bureaucratic. But they are not operative in the present and the near future. All these changing business theories, the competition theories, are something else. In the past, we competed in a reactive way. A company started to go up and high and high and high and high, and the other company did the same. If a bank launched something, the other bank would launch exactly the same thing to counterattack. The same thing happened in a supermarket. But now strategies are customer centric with the purpose of giving more value to conquer them, to retain them, and have long term relationships. Mentalities change. And many business schemes and management schemes are different. We need managers that are agile with an innovative and strategic thought, seeing the most common things now, having that ability to conceptualize phenomena in order to establish a strategy that could beat the competition, to create opportunities, to take advantage of them, where everybody's looking at a crisis and they can see things differently, supported on different concepts. Another one is to handle the language of new technologies. This is fundamental. And when I say handle the language of technologies in an exponential way, it doesn't mean that an accountant has to be expert in everything. That's impossible. Very few technical people know about everything, but we have to know the central, the core part of a technology. I'm not an expert in technology, but I have to know where they can be applied, how technology can be combined. Not because I'm an expert, but because I know where I can use it. It is important to know what we can do technologically speaking vis-a-vis a problem. Steve Jobs is a very admired person, right? He developed many products that projected Apple, but Steve Jobs was not a technology expert. He knew how to conceptualize. He has very basic knowledge. He knew how to define them, how to expose problems, and stemming from it, he really knew how to use it. His peer Bosnia was a technical person. He knew how to solve technical problems. And that's how we have to act as accountants, to know how to conceptualize, know how to solve a problem, and the detailed technological part be left to the experts. But we have to dominate technology language. Number three, data scientific. In any sector, You can see there are a lot of information, a lot of data. I was in an innovative workshop for doctors. They have a great advances. More than 700,000 medical reports are published, lots of books. And tell me, what doctor can read all those reports? No one. But there's an intelligent system that can read all that and elaborate summaries. The doctor has to have access to those summaries, and the doctor becomes data scientific. And we can see this in several professions where they have to make decisions based on great volumes of data. What a company produces the most are data to extract value, intelligence for informed and good decisions. And that implies having the capacity to handle the different information, the different data. Of course, the big data is also used because no one could use and could devour or read all the information that is available. But based on the results that we have from the summarization of this information, we have to make informed decisions. So the public accountant that has always been the man of the information now has to be the scientist of data, a man connected with companies that is able to identify opportunities for the companies, to know the customers, to be customer centric, to measure their behaviors, their intentions. There's where all those data volumes are needed, but extracted, going or filtered through intelligence. And finally, the development of capacities and abilities for innovation, what we call soft capacities: problem solving, innovation, critical thought, teamwork. Those are subcapacities, and we are not taught those at school. They do not teach that at school, but they are predominant. Andres Oppenheimer, he's a journalist. He came some years ago, and he was here to publicize a book. He was describing a society not of knowledge, but of capacities. And the book says that in the different companies, they are asking for soft abilities of solving problems, interpreting results, critical thought, because knowledge is not eternal. Knowledge can become obsolete. But with these soft capacities, you can catch all of these things as soon as they are out in the market. So soft capacities are very highly demanded. Bill Gates said that it is not a title war but a talent war. And when saying talent, it means people developing their soft capacities, the soft abilities that must be developed by a public accountant. These soft capacities that make of him a change agent. Some years ago, I was invited to give a conference here at a Mexican university with a diploma course on systems, on information technology. But they were only teaching information. They were not leading the people to be innovators. So me and a friend founded an innovation center and a business innovation center in La Escuela Superior de Administración. And we started a research aimed at knowing what kind of soft capacities have characterized great innovators to be great innovators. Leonardo da Vinci, She, Einstein, Steve Jobs, Masukandra, and many others were selected, and we supported in a survey made by Harvard called the ADN of Great Innovators. And we started investigating, and great innovators have seven important qualities: asking, changing reference frameworks, systematically changing, connecting, uh, interconnecting with others. And these capacities, of course, are the ones that a public accountant has to develop if he or she wants to be a change agent. And we are seeing it in La Escuela Superior de Comercialización. We have been teaching for 5 consecutive years, 5 diploma courses, how people start there and how they finish studying these soft qualities. And it's very interesting. It is not a matter of developing knowledges, but developing capacities. I don't know if you've heard about Singularity University, how singular that university it is. It was created in 2007, uh, aiming at following up new technologies to solve problems. So everybody participating there, they study not to be technicians in everything, but to dominate the language of technologies and finish with great projects. This university had a philosophy, and it was that all universities in the world have handled an education model dating from the first universities in century 16 and 17, where the teacher goes in front of the class, gives the class, the students um, absorb it. And now, well, at that time, universities had to teach knowledge, but now it's different because knowledge took years to change, and now things are different. The knowledge is totally fast, totally innovative. The knowledge is obsolete very soon, and we have to develop soft capacities. And that so-called singular university develops capacities, soft skills. And I'm saying that because the public accountant has to develop their capacities and skills, soft, basic, because that is the platform so that he or she develops and constitutes, becomes a change agent. That will be the core of the reinvention of the public accountant. Because maybe the public accountant can manage the language of great technologies, but if he's not able to solve problems, what's the use? So, dominating the new concepts, handling the language, developing capacities, and being the scientific of information is important. 10 minutes, doctor. I will be finishing in 10 minutes. Well, we have to define be, to be, or not to be. If the public accountant wants to be linear, he will be only an spectator of what is happening. But if the public accountant reinvent himself, he will be a protagonist of the business world, of the organizations, of the creation. Thank you very much. Thank you, doctor. If you have a question for the doctor, any comment? Well, many people read that book you were mentioning. I couldn't hear you. Can somebody translate what he said to me? We cannot understand what you said because of the sound from your equipment. There's a distortion. I read the book you mentioned. I don't know if you want to write the question, and if you write it down, I will gladly read it. Accountant Carlos is saying, besides the books you mentioned, including Sálvense quien pueda, which which are the other books you mentioned? De Ya Basta from Antonio Oppenheimer. Those should be mandatory readings. And if you allow me, I will give you an email address. And if you send it to me, I will send you a book that is the Bible in innovation. It's where I talk about innovation. What's the innovation that is required, that is demanded, and many concepts that we consider as as very important. This is not a Bible as a religious word, but as a source of knowledge. So, in those terms, I would be giving away this book. I would be creating what it should be done to create value, the tools and the guidelines to apply in the practice from the point of view that there are many things that happened long, long ago, even from human creation. For example, maybe you've heard the design thinking as if it was something new, but it is something old with other names. But these same things were used. He designed. The Bible itself says you are creating a human from dust. And the roots of this word is from the Greek designed. So many of the concepts were known from the very beginning of humanity. If you want, Martínez Villegas Fabián arroba at Gmail, Martínez Villegas Fabián at gmail.com. Martínez Villegas Fabián at gmail.com. Another question? There's another comment from Christian Ways. I share the opinion, innovative opinions and data analysis. The big four are already applied, but now we have to develop and strengthen them to improve our competitiveness. Yes, that's true. I agree. Christian Ways said that competitiveness is a matter of developing the big four. We are welcoming countries like Ecuador, Argentina, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Peru, Costa Rica, and Yucatan that are connected at this point in time, sending you the very great greetings, very warm greetings. When we talk about competitiveness, it is a more complex term because we have to consider what we saw, what we read here. To be updated, companies should become digital, even when they can stay analog. They should become digital to process more information. That have to monitor in real time everything on what the company depends on, and this allows us to increase our competitiveness. Competitiveness is not a unique concept, but it is important to consider all these words here on the blue fields to help us be customer centric. I would like to ask accountant Cesar Cetina, please deliver this award to Dr. Fabian Martinez y Villegas. Good afternoon to you all. UC&CS America delivers this diploma award to Dr. Fabian Martinez y Villegas for his participation as a speaker in the different technical conferences 2022 within this 23 meeting, the great challenge of the public accountant in his or her invention process. For those of you who are interested in the digital book I mentioned, here you have my email address, and I will gladly send the electronic book. Remedios already wrote down the email, so we can hand it over anyone who's interested. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. Well, we will continue with our agenda. I will ask accountant Orfa to put us in context for the next talk. Thank you, Judith. Yes, in fact, to know the importance of human rights before the current happenings in the world, we are talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Judith, would you please introduce the excellent speaker that we are going to have in a moment?
Thank you. Thank you. So we have Master Vicente Justice, public accountant, graduated from ESCA, attorney at law, master in fiscal and administrative law, certified in international law, and PhD student in Columbia University, and also member of fiscal members of litigious lawyers in Mexico, an award by the Association of Lawyers of Mexico, and he also leads current planning and the tax advisor of UC&CS. It is my honor to give you the floor, Vicente Ortiz Justice. We are happy to hear from you. Go ahead, please. Is your mic on? Mr. Vicente Ortiz, are you already in? Yes, he's connected. Probably he has some issues with his presentation. If you want us to manage your presentation, then please open your microphone. We cannot hear you. It seemingly there's an issue with your audio. Vicente, we cannot hear you. Mr. Vicente, we're going to project your presentation and we're going to dial to you. So we're going to have your presentation. It's 9 of us, so I welcome all of you to the training course in this week's the last speaker was talking about technological innovation. There are some other aspects that are also affecting everybody in a different manner. I'm going to give you an easy example. My background first is as follows. In the last recommendations of 2016, the famous recommendations number 24 and 25 are famous. This is of the FATF. This is related to human rights. The international laws against these three attacks: first, for Europe, terrorism financing; number two, drug dealing; and number three, tax evasion. So, under these three premises or concepts, authorities, governments are implementing more stringent laws. Before the presentation of this material, they are going to help me with the presentation. By the way, I want to say that the main goal that we provide attention to human rights, it's because this is going to be a great support in the defense at international level, and this is due to some excesses that were present regarding the way in which authorities are inspecting, quantifying, or increase sanctions and penalties or fines. In these actions of the authorities, a series of violations have been detected to human rights, and sometimes due to the desperation of tax authorities to collect taxes. Mexico has not been the exception. Since 2022, as a result of these recommendations, now we have the controller beneficiary. So many countries, in order to identify the truth, personalities, owners of companies that can participate, they are as old as us, like Anonymous Society. Now we have the names. Now, those are examples, and little by little, we are limiting the privacy in the acts of the private initiative, especially the fiscal. So, with each action, society has had to ask for support to different legal instances, and obviously they are not favorable. So, we are just looking around to look for someone to defend us because we didn't get support. They did not see that there were human rights violations. And I want to remind you that human rights need to be protected with some warranties, and these warranties are established in the Constitution. When we have this, the correct analogy is the political constitution of the country. Also, the Magnum Charter. Somebody said, we are not Magnum. We are a consortium of states. Due to a democratic decision, we decided our supreme laws, and therefore the Constitution is the one that obliges that human rights of humans are protected with the Constitution. These warranties safeguard human rights. Sometimes human right is implicit with the warranty. Many said that human rights didn't exist in the fiscal area. No, that's not true. There are lots of human rights protected with some warranties. And this is not only in tax matters. This is what we know, but we need to know since when we have these human rights. You know very well that in the post-war era, many things happened. In spite, the worldwide took place in Europe, and Vietnam and Korea were in Asia. Also, Ireland in the European region. Well, in Mexico, in America, that's where we had that concern, and we achieved an agreement that was signed on March the 2nd, 1948, the American Declaration of Human Rights and Duties of the Humanity. March the 2nd, 1948. However, we can say that this is the first document that protects human rights in the international arena. After that, then we had on December the 10th, 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And what's the difference? In theory, no difference should exist, but the first aspect was regionality. The American part covers the whole continent, the Americas. And the other part is the legal capability to carry out their presence, to realize their presence all over the world. Countries, continents did not sign this international agreement on human rights, however. From there, we have the International Agreement of Political and Civil Rights in December 1966, the International Agreement of Economic Cultural Rights on December 16, 1966. These two agreements are somehow involved or getting closer to those problems that were necessary back then. However, according to all current means and tax pressure, because as I said, in Europe, we have first the protection to fight terrorism and then taxes. In America, in Mexico, and in many countries, the interest to fight first drug dealing and number two, tax evasion. So tax is number two, and combat to terrorism has been third place because there's no much. Those of us that have been in Europe or studying there, we know that we have a lot of buses and all the tramways and public transportation put some announces in the walls. It says not to terrorism, do not finance money, and you don't know the destination because this will go to terrorism. If you go to a hotel, you need to leave a copy of your passport. Otherwise, if you do not present your passport, you are not going to get a room. They are afraid of who you are. What are you going to do? So this is a simple example of the interest prevailing in this continent. However, here our concern is money laundering, asset laundering, tax fraud, and from there the characteristics of the secondary laws according to the concerns of each state. And the truth is that we have a doctrine principle and guarantees are established in the maximum constitution of a state, and human rights are backed by secondary laws. And we can give many examples, and at the end, if you want, we will see some examples. Now, it is important to find the roots on why we come to human rights. Why is it a topic in which I need to involve many factors? And this is due to the need that we have these organizations coming to a non-desirable extreme. We need to see the tax subject. There are many complaints, and at jurisdictional level, courts, there's little in fiscal area, but it's going to be an increase, especially for those countries that are increasing rapidly pressure to taxpayers, pressure to organized crime with many laws, and they are seeking first to cover all possible ranges of crimes and the responsible is not escaping. And from there, we go to the American Convention on Human Rights, which is undersigned on November the 23rd, 1969. So we already had this convention establishing their offices or headquarters in Washington. That's where the American Commission on Human Rights is headquartered. We are thinking or remembering that it is a result of those documents that were previously signed as the Declaration of Human Rights on May the 2nd, 1948, and some other documents long before December the 10th, 1948. What are human rights? Just to remind all of us, to remind us, because those seem to be very simple words, but they have something. Let's try to describe and break down this concept. It says that there are prerogatives that the individual, as a human, is allowed to have them in his daily activities. What does that mean? That you can act freely, I can do whatever I want in my day to day life, with some constraints, of course, up to the point in which I am going to do something that and now what they put in their face, you just see the eyes. Well, they complain human rights against their religion, and that was humiliating. They shouldn't take off their burqas, so they accepted that way of life. It took the burqa as theirs, and they reclaimed it. And we can also complain about not using it when we are there. This is something different. But they fought for that, so they were accepted because this was violating their freedom, and even due to health reasons, they were violating their privacy, etc. So this forced them to release and that they could use their clothes. So, in spite it being a human right and a prerogative, well, every day they have that burqa. For them, that's normal. So, it's a particularity making human rights to take characteristics of uses and customs of the religion or habits of a culture. And that's why where we have some issues when circumstances go in different way and they are taken to the commission and if necessary at the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. Let's classify human rights in two parts. Natural rights. Which are natural rights? Are those rights that human beings have for the simple fact of existing, for breathing, the right to live. They are implicit. These natural rights are implicit to life, freedom, dignity, physical integrity, just to mention some of them. And it is implicit as the same essence. When the first breath is inhaled. And then we also have some other rights as a result of the society. They have evolved all over the world. That's why we speak about generations of human rights because they are added in such a way that by searching, when you are supporting a dream, living a dream, as Martin Luther King mentioned, this dream is translated into not regulations, but in the awareness, especially, and acceptance of what you can or cannot do as an individual and part of society. So we need to know these human rights. And those of society, we can be mentioning electoral, property rights, economic, cultural, and civil rights. All, all these aspects that in many instances are not directly part of a person, but it is to pay a better level of life. And we have received huge pressures at international level. The first in 2011, June the 2nd, modified the second article of the Constitution and generated different official standards, Mexican in this case and other countries, and they established some regulations to protect and guarantee life, rights, and quality of life. This is obviously the main element, the current fight, life quality. Some countries would be happy of having just peace. Well, anyway, with the worldwide progress, the goal is to have an excellent way of living, physical safety, and legal security. And for this, we have this knowledge of human rights for individuals, citizens, and knowledge of human rights by authorities. Sometimes it's kind of utopic because we are having different notions, differences, many aspects that you do not consider in the short future. In some other places, civic rights are different. I am not neglecting any country of America, but in Europe, when I had the chance to know some of them, I don't want to favor any of them. I just limit myself to say that I saw a lot of honesty. In Italy, for example, there were no robberies or violent acts. Policemen are doing something else because the person will stay all day long in pajamas. So there is no violence almost, not even the fearful of terrorism. But those are examples that I am just giving you, which are the characteristics that we're going to find in human rights. They are universal. Any human being, for the sake of living, have them. They are absolute. They are valued all over the world. We need to respect them. You should respect these rights of citizens and vice versa. They are originary or substantial, inherent to the human being. But why originary? Because they originate in the human being, but taking some shades on the features of each person. They are not going to be seized. They cannot be any warranty. They are untransferable. They cannot be given to someone else. I don't have the right for life, so I'm going to assign that to you. That's a different fact. I'm just giving some examples. You cannot resign to them. As many laws, they cannot be resigned. They are inalienable. They are not in commerce. They cannot be bought. They are imprescriptible because they are not lost by any cost. They can be limited as the right of freedom in the case of an inmate who's sentenced according to a conviction. You can stop rights. But there are some countries that, in order to supplement and not exceed restrictions more uh, beyond of restricting freedom, many countries try not to apply the pain of death. It doesn't exist in Mexico. For example, in the army did exist, but also the military sector removed that sentence, this planning to protect life. So we also know that they are permanent. When a human right is going to elapse, till they die, that's when it's not a person, but a thing. According to civil law, it's different. But all of us are visualizing this concept all over the world. They are immutable. They are not changing with the time, but they acquire different features due to uses and customs that are incorporated in the society in each regime. There was a regime in Iran when Ayatollah Khomeini was removed. The Shah of Iran became from a capitalist state, then they went to Islam in a very orthodox manner, but they are fanatic. And they changed the whole situation. And obviously, the idiosyncrasy and management of human rights was not exactly good or the same. It was a completely radical change to this nation. Human rights need to be protected, mainly with international treaties, conventions, protocols, in an internal manner through international right of human rights in all countries and in their supreme law, constitution. From there, for example, in order to spot how to classify, and as I said, one design constitution and human rights in secondary laws. Secondary laws arise as a result of the sources of law, human rights. We have international treaties, general principles of rights and law, and also doctrine of publishers that study international law. This is a very well known concept. So they study international law. Those are located in that concept. Which international treaties am I talking about? The Convention to Prevent and Sanction Genocide, undersigned in New York, December 1948. Declaration of the Children's Rights in New York, November the 20th, 1959. The Declaration of the United Nations to remove any racial discrimination in New York, December the 20th, 1963.
The civil and political rights signed on December 16, 19, I don't, 66, I think. The first protocol of political and international rights, December 16, 1966. Declaration on territorial asylum, December 14, 1967. The Stockholm Declaration on the Environment, that is part of everything that has to do with standards, ecological environment in 72, and the Declaration for Protection of All the People Against Torture and Other cruel and inhuman treatments, signed on December the 9th, 1975. No, yes, I was I was asking you. I'm on slide 2. Yes, I asked you to project them, please. Okay. This is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay, there we are. Next one. Next one. Okay, next slide. We also have covenants 169 from the World International Organization on Indigenous uh, people and tribal people in independent countries, signed in Geneva in June 27, 1989. And let's say that Mexico, I really don't like to say things like this, but in Mexico, we never abided by these indigenous peoples and tribal peoples in independent countries. All of these covenants were amended, but Mexico was not didn't abide by it because Mexico didn't amend their national labor laws to this international organization covenant. There were many people that were obliged to work during the pandemic, and they used constitutional relief against these dispositions, and they could retain their jobs. It was not human. Uh, it was not fair at all that people were obliged to work during this pandemic. We also have Rome Statutes of July 17, 1998. Next slide, please. Okay, good. What are the obligations of the subjects to international law to prevent human rights violations? Investigate these violations, sanction the people that have incurred in such violations, give the victims access to justice, give legal resources in favor of affected or impacted people, and of course, to foresee the repair of this violation of human rights to the people that were the victims. Since we are talking about a claim, we're talking about a conflict against the authorities. And even if there was a dispute among particulars, but the state didn't want to or couldn't or didn't make the efforts for a right investigation, or once the parts were sentenced, We have the access to several organizations. One is the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, and the other one is the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Let's imagine that with any regime and not taking into consideration any of the possibilities that people have, when we have a controversy, me quedé sin sonido. No sé. Okay. For the executive power, as it is known in the country, and any effort made before that part of the state should be administrative. If in the administrative field we don't have a favorable resolution, then I could go not only to the laws, not only to the commission, but to the Inter-American Court, for example. So you can go up and up the level of the instance at a legal level. If there is a sentence that is not favorable for me, I could go to a next instance. And it is called the amparo right or constitutional relief law. And it is because the lack of appliance of the individual guarantees. If for any reason there is a violation, but it is not recognized, and we have gone through the applicable instances, I should promote a claim of possible human rights before, as I told you, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. They are going to receive us and is going to receive each parts individually on the Mexican state on the one hand and the particular or individual on the other hand. If the court accepts that there is a probable violation, he's going to ask for the background, the different backgrounds to the different parts. They present all the proofs. The court presents a pre-opinion and calls for a hearing. In this hearing, there will be an exchange of conversation, a dialogue. And once a violation of human rights is recognized, after 3 hearings, I think, the court gives recommendations to the state. And if the country or member state does not comply with them, what's going to happen? Well, it goes from the commission. If in the first place the commission says, yes, there is a violation, and it gives the recommendations to the country, but if the member state does not do what is applicable, then it can go to the Court of Human Rights. And we can denounce the violation of human rights. When it gets the court, the file is examined, reviewed, going through a whole judicial process, hearing the parts and all the allegations that might be presented. If it is a human rights violations, the state should make some adjustments or anything that could be in the benefit of the victims, the court can rule against the state, asking them to do whatever they deem necessary. So Badilla was not finished till the end. The bone remains of this man have not been um, given back to the family, and they cannot give this bone remains to the family because most probably they disappeared it through acids or any other instruments. But in the case of Rosendo Badilla, that is the one that I know, even when it comes from a kidnapped from the military since 1779, and it's being carried forward and forward, and the different parts are not satisfied. Sometimes people do not feel satisfied because there are some habits, costumes in the different towns, in the indigenous or towns or peoples or tribes. Sometimes people demand because they consider that their cultural habits have not been satisfied, that they were psychologically impacted, or that the family is being tortured because they cannot bury uh, him or her accordingly. These are idiosyncratic beliefs due to the dogmas, the beliefs, the customs of a country. That's why the lack of delivery of the bones determine that a case cannot be 100% closed. So we can deduct, and from there we go to the next slide, please. The Inter-American Commission of Human Rights is a non-jurisdictional body in defense of human rights. It means that it's not a court. It is kind of a mediator, an administrative mediator. And as we can read here in the first two lines, instead, this implies that if it doesn't come to the substantiation or support of the allegation in order to define or determine the validity or the null act, the individual guarantees should be preserved, and the declaration of the American Declaration of Rights and Duties of Men should be done in a correct way, and in the American Convention on Human Rights, in terms of Article 26.1, the rules of the commissions have always to be observed in order to study a violation of the human rights. Now, this is a jurisdictional organism, the organization, the Inter-American Court. It is established in San Jose, Costa Rica, and the Article 1.1 describes the nature. Article 1 says that the Inter-American Court of Human Rights is a judicial institute, is autonomous, and its objective is the application and interpretation of the Inter-American Convention of the Human Rights. And the court exerts its functions according to the different provisions of the mentioned convention and the current or the present statutory elements. If the elements are not violating sovereignty, if the court is not violating the sovereignty of that state, maybe there will be a sanction that can be complied or not. Which are the methods so as not to incur in violations before the Inter-American Court? The conditions of non-compliance are distributed, and everybody knows about it. All the United Nations, and the country will be made public in all the different organs in order to cancel loans, etc. So the country should be obliged or pushed to cover whatever the authorities might determine. That is the jurisdictional function, and that's the way that it can be exerted. The Universal European Court is devoted to see the different litigations, criminal crimes, criminal activities, wars. It is a little bit, or according to the rules, they have a greater infrastructure, art structure in Europe, in America, and not in Europe, because it comes from a provision of the United Nations wanting not to go through a world war again and protect the activities of the United Nations. In in a certain way, why this happened, because there was maybe more union among the states in America. So America made a first declaration on human resources. There are 7 national judges, and they are recognized at a world level, and they are recommended, or the candidates are recommended because of their professional seriousness in terms of human rights. Mexico has presided in 2 times this convention, and Mexico's participation has been very active in the Commission and the Inter-American Court. And I mention Mexico because it has influenced in the actions, and also because in the country, in the convention, they have determined that Mexico also brings the cases not because they are full of lack of human rights cases. It's because we are in this convention, in this commission, and the country brings several cases from the country to be ruled there. There has been times when the army has detained a criminal. The criminal has been tortured in order so as to make them be or to force them to be a victim, and the roles become totally opposite, and the criminal becomes the victim. In terms of interpretation, when we say that we are going to solve a problem in against the crime, we should clarify what is to eliminate a crime, to kill the people or to try to avoid people committing crimes. Sometimes there's just a matter of grammatical or syntactic sense, what we finally determine from people involved in a case. So we can face situations that can be very complicated. Before all this, and as a final subject, I would like to talk about the tax field. What are the aspects that would affect us in terms of taxes? Lack of equality, proportionality, lack of tax capacity, juridical security, violation of the due diligence, inhibition of the free exercise of the activity that you want to, or whatever you want to do to make a living, transit freedom, or labor rights, among the most known. So, when are the laws violating this? When there is a standard violation, when people are not treated equally, when sanctions and fines are not even payable, and the purpose is not to reinsert the person in the society but prohibits him to go back. So many things were that have been done in the countries, especially in mine. These they are evident human rights violations because it's not an equal treatment to equal people. There's an abusive behavior or a wrongful sanction, a non-recognized procedure, an information that is not recognized, and this brings us to a legal defense or constitutional defense. And in the amparo law, that is a second instance criterion in terms of guarantees. Once these guarantees have been identified, is when we decide if they are against or not human rights. Human rights and the law are always together. The right to freedom is a guarantee, it's also a right. So let's always remember in the Supreme Courts in every country, protection has to be taken into consideration. Protection to guarantees and secondary laws in some countries in terms of breaking down of perfectioning of prevention of valuation, everything that has to do with it, human rights must be contemplated in the secondary laws. And I know that I'm very close to finish my presentation. You don't have to tell me. I know I just have 2 more minutes. I would like only to add that there are no tax history, but I think there's one objective. Involving human rights in tax aspects is very necessary. We always talk in terms of life, hurts, damages, violence, but human rights are involved in all the juridical acts, in every act a human being carries out. So the tax matter has a place. And in the near future, we have to take that into consideration because it should be taken into consideration. So, human rights are very important when we talk about tax matters because it includes the collective, the community. On my side, thank you very much, and my doors are open to any question. And please go ahead and show me my last slide. Any information you might need, here are my emails. I will always have my doors open to answer any question. And you only have 30 days to ask me about this because after 30 days, I don't even remember what I said. Thank you very much. I don't have words. Vicente Ortiz, what a time control for you. No, it's not time control, it's that I'm afraid of you. Yes, because there could be a violation to human rights to my physical person. Thank you very much. We have had a very interesting rhythm in this meeting, and especially during your talk. And now I would like there, Martinez, please open your mic and grant this award to Maestro Vicente Ortiz Justice. Hello, good afternoon to you all.
You are giving us whole teaching of this valuable topic on human rights. With this, we can prove the well management of this topic that you know so well. It is my honor to grant you this participation diploma that reads UC and CS grants this participation diploma to Vicente Ortiz Justice as speaker in the Technical Conference Cycle 2022 at the Yearly Congress of the World Corporation Partners, taught on September 22, WebEx, lasting 1 hour. And this is undersigned by our chairman, Mauricio Babarak. 2 points for continuous development. December, and this is September 22, 2022. UC&CS, Mauricio Mubarak Gonzalez. And thank you very much, Master, for this great talk. Thanks to you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the lot your talk. And now we are going to continue, accountant Orfa, please let us know a little bit about the next topic. Good afternoon. The purpose is that the participant knows the current reality of problems to activate this chain, how to reactivate the supply chain after the pandemic and due to the armed conflict. Judith, can you please introduce our next excellent speaker? Yes, it is my pleasure to talk about this bio of Dr. Armando, attorney at law by ITAM, master study in tax law, Pan American University, PhD study also at the Pan American University, author of customs procedures, author of customs strategy political forum, and some other publications, and also in El Financiero, founding member of the National Center for Foreign Trade, CENCOMEX, member of the International Network for Custom Universities, member of the Foreign Commission, and also counselor of the Chamber in Mexico City, member of Foreign Trade of the Mexican Association of Public Accountants, partner of MFB, not networking, UC&CS, partner of Foreign Trade and Customs, speaker at national level on foreign trade and customs right in different universities of the country as the Southeast University in Oaxaca, Latin American University, Simon Bolivar University, and Universitary Institute Karen. With no further ado, Armando Mendoza, I'm going to give you the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Can you hear me? Yes, very well. I don't know if you can look at me, but I have some errors in my image. No, we cannot see your picture. Well, my apologies. That's a good thing about being in pajamas. Let me see if I can resolve that, by the way. Yes, of course. So we're in a hurry. There's a lot to say. So I would dwell in my topic. Please let me know if my presentation is on the screen. Not yet. Not yet. We cannot see it. Now we can see your presentation. Okay, you cannot see my picture, but you can see my presentation. I don't know if you want to put it in presentation mode, please. There's there at the bottom. It is ready there. So the topic, as Mauricio proposed, it's interesting. I can say that the answer, well, there's no magic answer. All our customers would love to hear that. How to reactivate the supply chain, as you will see after my presentation, there's no magic formula. There are many questions, many elements that are involved since March 2020 with this new that we are in the middle of a pandemic and no one imagined that how we are integrated in the world, that a situation like this one had to demonstrate errors, that we had and the dependence that we were experiencing. Something that you are going to see, which is really interesting, is that we didn't learn enough as of today. First, what are we going to understand with this concept? The supply chain would be the strategic and logistic function of all the operations so you can put the merchandise to your final customer. And this implies input raw materials from the simplest to the most complex, primary, secondary, and tertiary goods. We're going to have 2 points that are considered every day. What's the goal of a supply chain? Lawyers, accountants are part of it. Deliver goods and services in a timely manner, prevent waste, distribution time, proper management of warehouses, avoid unforeseen errors. Those are the goals. Very few companies were able to overcome this. As of today, we are at situations that are not resolved yet, that have become worse. And we didn't know about this pandemic. We're finding a war with Russia, Ukraine, and the news that there's a conflict between China and the United States. And we do not know what's going to happen. This is generating opportunities for our country. We need to be prepared as professionals in our different areas to advise our customers in the proper manner. Many times you can say, well, what an accountant has to do here in this part a lot. Because if I don't have proper control in warehouses, I cannot give good attention to my customers and clients. If I don't have a good contract in sanction and scope, what's my position? And we saw that in supply chain contracts, for example, a simple thing. You can say, I have a contract of my life because I'm selling to a huge retail in Mexico. So I'm really happy. But you never foresaw a contract saying that as a result of a pandemic, you are not going to be able to deliver. And the retail said, you are committed to provide the merchandise. Otherwise, you would have a sanction of thousands or millions of pesos. But that's not the business. My business is to sell. And there is a problem. I'm sorry, I don't understand. These are businesses and you didn't comply. So it is not only not to sell, but now we're going to have sanctions. And this is going to be quite expensive. This is a situation that could happen. We can classify this as an act of God or force majeure that is foreign to our intentions. So, how courts will resolve, it's different, but we are going to be fearful. And the same happens with our controls to deliver our merchandise. But at the end of the day, a small input, something, which is a thing of everyday cell phones of big companies like Apple, did not think that their factories were going to be closed. And not because of raw material or personnel, but simply because of the lockdown and nothing can be produced. So all supply chains were suspended. And then all of us depend on the same vendors. And this is one of the topics that we wouldn't have thought of. In many cases, we knew that this was not the right thing. It was known that we did not have to depend on a single vendor. We supposedly needed to have more options. But this was not foreseen, as we will see in the conclusions of this talk. Curiously, when we saw the pandemic, we were thinking, I should have done this or that, I should have thought about the rest. And then we start having the pandemic, and perhaps it's normal. And at the end, they said, this is not going to happen again. And they have the same patterns as in the pandemic. So that was the solution to have this, not to suffer any supply chain. There's no fixed answer, but knowing what happened and the consequences, not to learn from errors, this is something that is not valid at the end of the day. Why not? Because we hope not, but it could happen again, and not because of a pandemic, but because of a war, which are the basic elements of supply chains: inputs, manufacturing, distribution. If any of those are missing, we have a problem in our supply chain. Someone will not be able to do their work, and they are going to be in trouble. And this is where it is interesting, and that's what I love about the stock market. But not like a game. If I am lucky, and then the share is going to increase value. Big investors that know, that are very knowledgeable about the manufacturing of the same. And if someone does not allow that this vendor complies with the purpose, there's a rupture for something that we do not imagine. And this is because of the elevators, the cables, making an elevator to go up and down. As of May of this year, the Ministry of Economy is asking for a permit. We need to submit some documents that I need to request the producer, but not the producer of the wire, but the one that bought the steel sold to the manufacturer. So I need to ask for that documentation. Even when these so big companies that ask for thousands of kilometers of cable say no, it is not so easy. So something so easy makes me not to have a cable in Mexico, and makes, for example, that Torre Mayor doesn't have one elevator in operation or a crane. So the office cannot work. Something so simple, not so complex, and not a day to day things like the microchips. This is something that we were not thinking about. And that was something that we experienced during the pandemic, long distances and the dependence that we have. China specifically, it is not that they are bad. As of today, in foreign trade, we'll hear that China is bad because of the prices. No, China has everything, cheap things, mid price, and very expensive, and good, bad, and excellent quality. So you buy what you want. They were intelligent to have different processes, and we have seen that for 40 years. As of today, we can also see that wages have risen, and this is important in supply chains. At the end, Mexico, when we speak about minimum wage of similar sectors to those that can be in conflict today, have cheaper costs. So this is where Mexico needs to speak up. We're already speaking up. We still need rules, many other things to see if Mexican businessmen are at the right level to accept the coming challenge. It is not easy. As I said, talking about the pandemic, we are more famous for electronic components. Many cars were affected, the automotive industry was affected, and in luxury or premium cars in 2021, production chains resumed activities, but they needed to get back to analog systems because digital boards were not available. So they needed to get back, they needed a solution, so they needed to get back to this chain. So they had an older version. If you want a car, well, hold on when we get chips. So that was something really important. It is interesting to see that as of today, one of the common question is, don't we have specialized people or companies to put plants in other places of the world? Yes, there are people who are specialized. Talking about top management, yes, there are. But talking about non qualified labor, no, only in China. And this specialization is generating this dependency, a situation on the short term, but it will extend to the long term. This is one of the pillars of President Biden to establish manufacturing companies that comply with these parameters, not to depend that much on China. But this topic needs to be tackled and on the long term, trial and error. And these situations may cost high problems. This is an example of index manufacturing companies in different sectors experience that inputs coming from Asia, and China is one of the most important. 45% of companies experience this in their contracts with their customers. But this is not only to talk about delays, but also the consequences of this delay, and not only the insatisfaction of the final customer that was so willing of these products after a lockdown. This happens a lot in the United States. There was a TV program. I'm going to give you money in the lockdown. So they had money to buy, but at the end, they didn't have the products to spend these resources with. It has not come to normality. There were many factors that were not foreseen in the past. Just to say something, absenteeism in the United States, that was an interesting problem. I don't know if you were able to travel to the United States for vaccination, something that I read in the news and I didn't believe. I saw several restaurants and they said, I'm going to pay some dollars so you can have your work application. And we were joking with my wife, once we are making a line here, let's make another line for the application and let's see what are we going to do. You see a lot of homeless in different cities of Los Angeles because there's no work of all the companies that close. On the other side, you see a lot of notices looking for employees and they don't want to work in these positions. I don't know if it is because of the wages, the qualification, but at the end of the day, there was an important movement as an element with this supply chain. And not only regarding inputs, but a lot of people. Many companies needed to lay down personnel, and not when the effects of the pandemic reverted during the lockdown. These employees needed to eat, so they moved, they got another job. So that generated that the manufacturer that had a specialized employee was left without the employee. So they needed to retrain personnel. A clear element that affected the supply chain, both in place and also costs, were freights. Look at the costs. January 2020, the cost was 40 feet. This is the biggest container at a price of $2,000. The regular price was around 10, 15 years the same. And then it started increasing and then it went to 13,000. This chart is for negotiated containers. The truth, when we got back in March 2020 to September 2020, there were no containers because they were stuck at some place in the world because they were with merchandise that could not leave harbors because many vessels got stuck. They had some COVID Marines, so they were not allowed to disembark. I needed to pay freights, and we paid 2 tons of face masks. Sin, we paid 6 million pesos to pay for an air freight. That's a lot of money, a lot of product that could have been brought to the country to cover this need. And the customer said, how you never thought that this was going to increase? No, we didn't have any backgrounds that could suggest what was going to happen. As I was saying, it might seem that freights did not increase that much, up to 13,000, but I think it was much more at the end. Speaking from 2 to 13, it's a lot. It's a huge increase, but at the end of the day, they are 7,000 or 8,000. In August, they dropped and they increased again due to the war effects. Many sea vessels are not arriving to the Baltic Sea. There are some places where they don't want to work with them. So, and they have also got into agreements, companies that decided to punish Russia. They are not covering the region, with the exception of medicines and some humanitarian help. But this makes chains, transportation traffic to be affected. When it is affected, it generates some situations, and when they are accumulated, you don't see how they are going to be resolved. In Los Angeles port, which is one of the most important, receiving a lot of products from Asia, there was a delay of 75,000 containers that were stuck. A port of this size might seem that it was not that much, but it is not only 75,000, but when you open again the port and start to work, you need land transportation to move these containers. So there was a lack of carriers and vehicles for cargo. And also the transport are lacking drivers. And in the United States, we are saying that only in the state of Texas, they have the same number of trucks than Texas, than Old Mexico. Just imagine the size. Just one state has more than all Mexico, the country. And even though they are lacking transportation, cargo, and drivers, there were laydowns, and now they are hiring people. They have to train them to understand each one of the products. They say that it is not the same to have liquids or teddy bears, so that's different. We can see in this example what I was telling you. For 2022, there is a topic on how container prices are dropping, but we are really far away of an important topic that has also affected, as it was said, was the war between Russia and Ukraine. I am not introducing here the problem of China and the United States. As you have seen in the news, there's also a problem that it's patent. China is getting alliances with Russia. United States is saying if they don't do some activities, they're going to apply more sanctions. And China is pressing with Taiwan with the alliances that they have. So they say this is a very difficult panorama. Diplomacy will have to prevail or fail. So I can say that this topic has an informal reading on how long you can read a book called Nunca, Never. This is a thesis, it's a good book, and it says that when they were writing a book about World War II, no one wanted this war. It might seem that yes, but no uh, governor wanted that situation due to different decisions, good and bad. The conflict of this World War, could this happen again with all these historical backgrounds? Could this happen again? That's the thesis of the book.
It is very interesting. They talked about China, and they are proposing the question of can this be solved? Will the supply chains would be impacted again? What's the matter with Trump? I have a lot of Mexican customers, 100% Mexican customers belonging to the Republican Party that are living in the United States, and they support. So we should take into consideration that not all Mexican people are against what Trump said. Well, but going and reviewing what happens in the automobile sector and the impact on it with the Russian and Ukrainian conflict, well, it's because they generate a lot of US dollars, especially for a country like us that are a manufacturing country, and we have this kind of conflicts. Well, the labor hand should be impacted. Some of the products that would be impacted would be palladium and platinum because they are used for the catalytic converters. When we have only one manufacturer of a certain product, it's important to study this unique situation because it could be impacted. When analyzing Trump, we can remember that there was a commercial war having impacts in the customs tariffs. Chinese products were impacted. At that time, the Chinese president, in a very shrewd way, went away to a very far away town from Beijing that had a particular characteristic that are rare rounds place with palladium and platinum. So he paid the community a visit, and he said, okay, you are threatening me with these sanctions. So, okay, I won't sell my land to you where you find your palladium and platinum. And with this very intelligent movement, he didn't break the supply chain, and Trump went back. But it is important to say that even the United States would really be very negatively impacted because countries are interrelated and depend on China in many things. Not depending on China and stopping this situation is not easy, but the United States want to do it. Uh, some of the things that impact neon, xenon, palladium that are need to manufacture other products um, and some oil manufacturing process. This oil that is used in cosmetics and fries. And this product is manufactured in Russia and Ukraine. And let's remember that if two countries are in a war, people that used to work in factories are not working there anymore, or in the fields, they are not there anymore. They are fighting. So the supply chain is broken. If we turn to our countries, what are we doing? Well, sometimes I ask my customers, my clients, what we're doing. And the answer, of course, is complex because the interest in going into these processes might be high, but the crime, the processes, mafia groups, not only drug trafficking, but power mafias controlling some sectors do not allow the geographical areas to be open, and some opportunities are lost. Fertilizers, wheat, corn, natural gas. There are many things that can be impacted. For example, the If we don't see chips being sold, it's because of the lack of oil to fry them. Now, other aspects of the day-to-day life are being impacted because of the lack of fuels. Now that the winter is coming, we don't know what will happen in the future if Russia is just waiting for the cold season to force the other countries to follow the route that he wants. And just as you closed my financial routes, you made an embargo, you stopped my financial institutional way of transferring money. I'm going to close you the power supply. This is one of the reasons why Germany has not uh, decided for a frontal battle with Russia. And since the pipes go through their territory, the conflict is being handled in a very different way and a very unique way because the consequences can be chaotic. This is something that was learned in the supply chain is digitalization, the systems part, because there was a boom in all the sectors. Today we are having a meeting through Zoom, and we were in the Hotel Diplomatico in a face-to-face way. Now we are doing it from far away. It is a way of being close to one another. Of course, I love more the in-person sessions. For example, I cannot see your faces. I don't know if I'm boring you, if you are already sleeping. I hope most of you are there. But we have a different interaction. However, there has been a change, and it generates such an amount of information is difficult to process in the way we were used to. So what happened? The digital world started to change so that systems can foreseen as function in a different way. For example, with robots, how distribution centers of Amazon or Alibaba work, where there are no people nowadays. Everything is electronic. The robot knows what to do, when to do it. They pack the product, and we get the product. And there's no people involved from the moment you buy until the moment you get your good. I don't know if you have seen Amazon packages in the United States. For example, um, they deliver the package and leave it outside the door, and nobody steals it. Something that could be unthinkable in Mexico. It doesn't happen here. And also the extra mile. The extra mile doesn't depend on anybody in several countries. And the idea is to have all these systems in place around the corner in 2025. We have been in a lockdown situation for the last 3 years, but the next 2 years, everything will be already digitalized, and it will be interesting to see the challenges we have ahead in the accounting and legal part so that we go hand in hand with this development because the flows are very rapid, very fast, faster than what we can respond or how we can respond. Let's suppose that the tax system comes and asks for the information in the same very minute. Are we going to be able to do it? Is the planning going to be ready? Is the information going to be ready? People will arrive with you, will get to you when they have already done everything and ask our professional services, but everything will be faster and quicker than we are used to. So it is important to be prepared. What we are looking for in the as a strategic architecture in the supply chain? And just as Alba Edison said, if you want to have different results, you have to do things differently, right? So we have to redefine the strategy in the supply chain. We have to know the new commercial agreements, and this is something very important. Mexico has several trade or commercial treaties, and we don't use it. Ev- Everything we know is TEMEC, in the past Telecan. Somebody's opinion says is that is something good. Some other people said this is a very bad thing. So the opinions are split. And somebody knows this fact as the only good thing or the only bad thing that Salinas de Gortari, our former president, did. But let's assume that we really have more trade treaties and economical or commercial treaties, and we don't use it. We have to use them. The TPP 11, CPTPP 11, that is the Trans-Pacific treatment where Mexico, Chile, Malaysia, Japan are integrated in a way of working where Mexico, South America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Asia working together to have whatever we have with the United States, we can have with those faraway countries due to this treaty, and we are not taking advantage of it. So here in this strategic architecture, we have to maybe redirect our suppliers somewhere else. And I also have to see the tax impact, the custom tariff or logistic impact, because there are places where I can have a commercial treaty, but I only have one container that comes once a month to my country. And there are many things that we have to take into consideration, but there is not such an interaction in the other treaties. And all we are hearing we need more treaties, we need more agreements, but the fact is not only having more of them, but how we can take advantage of them. Something that is very important in international affairs and is not related to the commercial part are related to other things. For example, people wanting to work or establishing somewhere else, being resident in another country, for example, the United States, because they might acquire a house for less money, or different aspects that whatever you can think of. And do you know how taxes work in the United States? Do you know what this tax system is going to impact you? And there will be moments when you might ask yourself, Do I want to pay taxes in my country? Do I want to pay taxes in the United States? Maybe it will not be convenient for you in the future. So there are many aspects that have to be taken into consideration. The same thing happened with Spain. People only think that being a resident or being a citizen is important. I have now this new document that allows me to have a new status, but is it real that I will have benefits from this? Will be sustainable in time? The fact that I want to live in another country, that I want to pay taxes in another country, there might be implications impacting my life. There might be things that I'm not seeing, that I'm not looking at, and that may have consequences in my life. And the second one, that is redesigning operation models, knowing how I can work as at a regional, local, national level. Also have a control of risks, knowing what can happen with the supplier. Maybe the factory can go in fire, and maybe things I might not be involved or are not in the position to avoid, but I need the knowledge to know what to do. And there are many companies, as I was telling you, that were recommending to have a greater inventories, days on hand, or whatever that would be convenient in case of another pandemic. And another pandemic didn't happen, and things have been working as it used to work years ago. Automation has come, but it doesn't mean that automation means that we are ready in all the other aspects, in all the other fields. And here you might have heard there's what it's called the near shoring, and the president already talked about it. The economy ministry already talked about it, and the Mexican government might take another uh, position vis-a-vis or facing the American companies. So that's exactly what we're doing, the nearshoring, because that's the way of externalizing a company's services. Because it here it says outsourcing, but it is different from the outsources or subcontracting. We think that the labor ministry is going to come and sanction us because in Mexico we are against subcontracting or outsourcing. But this is kind of the concept of nearshoring, is hiring services in foreign countries but relatively near. For example, the United States is very close, very close. In the first um, in the first bullet says using the services of another country. It doesn't matter if they are far away with a different time zone, different production costs. So nearshoring is, as the word might express, near or offshore, and there are costs far away. And this is what the Mexican government is proposing. We are trying to incentivize companies from abroad to come to Mexico. saying, I might not need a supplier in China, but after opening the borders, it will take time until they produce or manufacture again. What about the boat and all that? I have Mexico. Mexico is close. Uh, Labor force is cheaper in Mexico than in China. I know we have an office in China, and it is an expensive office. We pay wages that are high for people, and turning their head towards Mexico might become interesting. That's why advantages are more contact with the outsources. It's not the same to travel 13 or 12 borders going from the any coast you might mention in the United States, east or west, and go to China, or taking a trip to Mexico, for example, from Seattle to Mexico. This is the most distant part in the continental area. In 5 hours, they would be arriving in Mexico, or 3 hours to Tijuana. So it is a more practical thing. If the product would be as expensive or as cheap as in other part, but the logistic part, the transportation part would cost might probably half. We would have half the prices we could have in a very distant part. It is important to know the market. We have to know how they establish rules. It is important to know the difference of the Chinese rules or the United States rules or the Mexican rules. There are many bad aspects in the Mexican labor hand market, but there are also very good things in the labor hand market. We have a lot of Latins in the United States. They know even the language. They don't speak totally good or perfectly well the English, but they have a great knowledge of the language here in Mexico. Not the common American, but the entrepreneur is always looking to know more than one language. Of course, a third thing would be a higher quality. In Mexico, we can do it. It all depends in the training and the raw materials. Obviously, the equipment, the machinery, the tools are decisive and important. So it's important also to have a legal knowledge of the environment. Knowing the legal environment is important. We don't even know the Mexican legal environment 100% because there are always changes. And we have to interpret legal provisions, but at the end of the day is part of what we are looking for. As I said, the economy ministry announced an industrial policy in 5 strategic sectors: agriculture, electronic, electromobility, medical services, and pharmaceuticals, as well as creative industry. So the near shoring is the reason why we could say, I will train my people, use me, work with me, and do not depend on China. This is something very important because on the political and diplomatic aspect, there was a question mark. Is Mexico moving towards China or towards the United States? If Mexico moves toward the States, we would be using the benefit of the nearness. In the operational aspect, So, also thinking of other political or diplomatic consequences, it would be better to be on the United States side. There's not a unique answer on what to do, but I could tell you there are several formulas, several ways of working that will depend on all the people that have to do with having a company. There are many companies uh, coming here to visit us. Today, we executed an agreement, Zipper, YKK. There are many, many important companies that are interested in Mexico, that they see this business opportunity for their countries in Mexico. There are many transnational companies that have not stopped their investment, not as it was expected, but they are still working. 2 years ago, remember, with Constellation, this beer manufacturer, Constellation, they have this industry closed due to water problems. But today, Constellation has installed itself in Veracruz. And as you know, beers are uh, uh, it's a product that can be exported by Mexico. But it's very important, no matter what's happening with the water and with the people, with the opinion of us being beer exporters. Constellation not only left Mexico, but it came more inside Mexico, that is the state of Veracruz, to continue manufacturing on mines. This is everything on my side. It's a very debatable aspect. There's not only one answer, but I have my doors open to you to any question. Thank you very much, Doctor. It is very nice to hear you with all this clarity. You have to talk. We only have to thank you. And I ask Joaquin Vera, the accountant Joaquin Vera, to open his mic and grant this prize for Dr. Armando.
Alberto Cabrera, could you please switch off your microphone? Accountant Joaquin, please open your microphone. I don't see Joaquin there. Okay, yes, of course, I can do that for you. It was really a very interesting presentation. You exceeded my expectations. As you say, there's no magic formula, but you opened that huge panorama of all the implications of the supply chain. They say that there are many problems at worldwide level and more problems will show up. So you opened a series of windows to be considered for the future. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody, and I say everybody because you are opening this panorama to us. Our organization is granting you this participation diploma for your participation on how to reactivate the supply chain after the pandemic and this armed conflict for this 23rd partner meeting and our 27th anniversary on Thursday, September 22. With this, we're closing the fourth day of our yearly conference. On behalf of everybody, we really appreciate sharing this knowledge with all your experience in this topic. Thank you very much. An applause for you. Thank you, Mauricio. Now we will continue with the agenda. Thank you very much. I want to ask Carlos Castro, please give us a word on reflection, disclosing. We have 5 minutes for that. We wished we had more time, but we need to adjust our time to the agenda. So please, Mr. Carlos Castro, open your microphone. The floor is yours. Thank you, Judith. Well, I am really thankful for the honor of closing this wonderful day of presentations. It was a great day to see colleagues, panas as I called my friends. We had wonderful presentations. It was a wonderful meeting. And I'd like to congratulate, first of all, the organizers of this meeting, starting with our leader. As I said in the presentation that I was participating, Mauricio Mobarak, Judith Remedios, all the team. Then the quality of our presenters. What we have seen today, it's really the dream team. Yes, it's really a wonderful team. And I consider that topics were really wonderful. And this is the place where we need to be, as Mauricio says. This is the future, the big core. So today, we concluded, and we are starting with the panel of doing businesses with all our colleagues that gave this presentation. They do that every year better. And then, as a restart point after the pandemic, doing businesses in Turkey, Malaysia, Istanbul is the entry to that region of the world. And then the part of Central America. So it is really an honor to have heard all these presentations today with these extraordinary speakers in this panel. Then Hilmer, Alejandro, their explanation, the importance of being on this side and the advantages that we can have, and also how important their topic was. And then we had a quality of speakers, not only partners of UC&CS, but also experts with very futuristic topics. As Mauricio mentioned, they open windows. So this day was closed with Master Justi. It was a keynote speech on human rights, as all the presentations of Vicente extraordinary. And I think that I don't know anybody that knows more about foreign trade, that manages shipments, foreign trade. You just need to read one of Armando's book to know how he masters the topic. Thank you very much, Vicente and Armando, for these keynote speeches. The truth is that we have a lot of experience today with this experience and these extraordinary presentations, like the one of the Dominican Republic. And this is teaching us that we can sell our services to the customer. And if we understand that we're a team, that if we join, we're strong, we can adapt ourselves to sell this quality. Then we can reach any any place. This is what we have learned. And I want to invite you tomorrow to a very important day. And the core topic is going to be the leitmotif of this work committee. This is where we have the true organization and contribution. I invite all of you to participate with your committee, tax, legal, World Bank, IFRS, the business. Please participate, contribute. Contribute with your quality and let's make businesses. Because there are countless businesses that we can undertake among ourselves, taking advantage of all this knowledge and all the quality in this organization. Thank you for the honor of giving this word. Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, Judith. And have an excellent evening. But we will see you back tomorrow, the most important day, quality committees. My thanks to you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos. Our dear Tana, the truth is that every day we are tightening our bonds, and the pandemic was not making all this relationship and communication with us. And we are tightening our bonds. Thank you very much to each one of you for the support of each session. Now we're coming to the final part of today's, and we are going to go to the assessment. So I want to give the floor to Adrian Nunez. Please give us the indication. He's going to give us the indications. Thank you, Judith. Just to reiterate the commitment to complete this document, the exams, and the survey that we carry every single day, and reiterate, as I have explained in these days, that information is on our subscription website, where you had the opportunity of filling out that questionnaire to attend these talks through our WebEx platform. you were able to see all the information to answer the survey. So please, you have a few minutes for the exam. I'm going to share the website with you so you can see it. That's the page of today where you can observe the survey instruction, day 4, September 22nd. So it is ready right now. I reiterate that materials are available, and with them, you would be able to find topics of today, documents. There they are already uploaded of UC&CS America. All of them are uploaded. So you can download all these documents whenever you want. And reiterate that the commitment, please answer our questionnaire, the survey, and the exam. Please answer the exam before the closure of today, September 26th. Next Sunday is the deadline for the exam, so you can have enough time to answer it. So on the 26th, you have everything completed. This is it on my part, and I wish you a good evening. They are opening some files. Mauricio Mobarak is saying that some files cannot be opened, that they cannot download. Hector Bravo or Fabian Martinez sends an error, 404. Please check your system to upload the system again, and I will check them again. Check your browser, probably it is having some issues. If you have any problem or any error or no link is appearing, reload the website so you have the information back again. Thank you. If there are no additional questions, we're going to close this session by thanking you. We will be back tomorrow. Please have a nice evening. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Bye. And now we're closing our virtual meeting. See you tomorrow. Bye.